If Burnley carry on at the same rate, then the numbers certainly stack up, and start comparing them to the greatest teams ever to grace the division. To just about everybody who's watched the Championship this season, it's become painfully obvious that Burnley are the best side in the division. In fact, if you haven't watched a single minute of Championship football this season, simply looking at the league table would tell its own story. With 2/3 of the season gone and the home straight in sight, Burnley are in control of the title race with an impressive 7-point lead over second place Sheffield United. In terms of automatic promotion, it's a gigantic 17-point lead over third place Middlesbrough. So to reframe this debate, is it about time we stop comparing Burnley to the 2023 Championship class and start comparing them to the greatest teams ever to grace the division? Get your views in via the comments, even before you've heard mine, if you have strong feelings either way. We'll get on to the narrative concerning Vincent Kompany's incredible transformation in style at Turf Moor. But first, let's just go over the current numbers and make a few projections about what Burnley might be capable of if they can keep up their current incredible pace. Burnley have scored 65 points in their 29 games so far this season. They've only been defeated twice. The points per game is currently 2.24 for the Clarets. That means if Vincent Kompany's side maintains the form of the first 2/3 of the season right the way through until the end, they will land on 103 points. Now, all you second-tier historians will know that cracking the 100-point mark is enough to put a Championship club in pretty rarefied air, along with great sides like Peter Reid's Sunderland, Nigel Pearson's Leicester, Chris Hughton's Newcastle, and of course, the record holders, Steve Coppell's 106-point Reading. As an aside, it shows us just how brutally consistent that Reading side was, given the fact that this brilliant Burnley side actually need to improve for the last third of the season if they want to break the record. Speaking of rarefied air, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here and want YouTube to recommend more of the same to you, be sure to hit that like button. Now, one record Kompany's Burnley could have their hands on sooner rather than later is for consecutive Championship wins. Burnley are currently on a 9-game winning streak. Therefore, a win at the weekend against Preston would put them level with that amazing Reading side we've already mentioned on 10 straight wins, as well as the Aston Villa side of Grealish, Abraham and McGinn in 2019. If they were to beat Preston and then beat Watford on Valentine's Day, that would be 11 straight wins. So they would then hold the Championship, that is post-2004 record, and also tie up with Jean Tigana's Fulham side of 2000-2001, who won 11 games straight. Actually won their first 11 games straight. Further wins then at Luton and Millwall added on would take Burnley to 13 straight victories, which would put them ahead of Alan Kirbishley's Charlton side of 99-2000, who hold the post-Premier League record at second-tier level for 12 consecutive wins. The run continuing could also mean a potentially very early promotion day too. The run up to Easter gives Burnley games against all of their direct rivals currently in 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th. That's Watford, Luton, Middlesbrough and Sheffield United in fixture order. Now, wins in these vital head-to-heads obviously add 3 points on for Burnley, but they would extend the gap against direct rivals. That means if that 17-point gap can be maintained going into the trip to Middlesbrough on Good Friday, that could end up being an automatic promotion decider if Borough was still third. So then if Burnley carry on at the same rate, then the numbers certainly stack up with them being one of the best Championship teams ever. But it's not all about numbers. What does my obviously very subjective eye test say about them? Well, they play beautiful football and they're certainly in the conversation. What I would say is perhaps they lack the thrilling star player like a Buendia, Mitrovic, Sahar, Benabia, Phillips from a lot of those other great teams we've mentioned. But that probably goes more to enhance the argument that they're just an excellent team with a wonderful pattern of play. As hinted at earlier, we just can't ignore the brilliant transformation made from the Sean Dyche style to the Vincent Kompany style, with a new squad taking on very new ideas pretty much exclusively over the course of a single pre-season. I'm struggling to think of a greater transformation in terms of a team going on to win the championship. I suppose Jean Tigana's Fulham jumped from 9th to 1st. They won the first 11 games, so that was incredibly immediate and got over the 100 points total. I'd also throw in Daniel Farke's Norwich of 18-19, who jumped from 13th to 1st and arguably made their transformation in September, let alone in between two seasons. What we can say is many of these teams we were comparing were in the same division before. It's only really Chris Hughton's Newcastle side who went from relegation and losing every week to utter domination in the Championship. However, we don't get the complete shift in philosophy and playing squad there, and there was always the overriding sense with Newcastle in the Championship that they were just too big and too powerful for the division. All of that probably does add fuel to the fire that Burnley are a fairly unique case here. The arguments against Burnley being one of the all-time Championship greats will, I guess understandably, revolve around competition and money. Those who would argue that beneath Burnley and indeed Sheffield United this season, things have been slow, would be right. The losing playoff finalists from last season, Huddersfield, completely fell off a cliff and are out of contention. The perceived big hitters at the top, including other parachute teams, Norwich, Watford, West Brom, Middlesbrough, all struggled at times and all sacked their managers. But I guess that's not the fault of the teams actually delivering up in the top two. In terms of finances, I do think it's very important to have a grown-up conversation about it and acknowledge that two things can indeed be true at the same time. We have an ever-growing body of evidence telling us that teams in receipt of Premier League parachute payments who are run competently tend to end up successfully leveraging that potentially big advantage. What I won't accept though is the two tribally motivated binary positions we often see people landing at. Yes, it's true that Burnley do have way more broadcast money than 21 of the other teams in the division. But it's also true that they're very well coached and have sold and recruited very well. Both realities can, of course, exist at the same time. Neither is the sole reason for their success, and neither should be disregarded. I would agree that Burnley haven't relied on the parachute money in the way other teams have before, but the idea they haven't touched the parachute money, well, let's wait until early 2024 then, when the financial results come out for this season, and if Burnley report a profit of about 45 million or more, then we'll all be able to agree the parachute money wasn't touched. In the meantime, I would say the same thing I say to all fans of teams who are in receipt of parachute payments. Don't tie yourself up in a cognitive dissonance trying to downplay the potential financial advantage. For God's sake, enjoy it. So my opinion, for what it's worth, is that to go down as one of the Championship greats, Burnley need to do the following. Firstly, and most obviously, they need to get promoted and win the division. Then they need to not let up after that job is done. Last season's Fulham could have been our first 100 points, 100 goals team, but they lost as many games in their last 11 as they did in the first 35. Thirdly, I think Burnley have got to break some kind of record that could be the winning streak, perhaps an early promotion, just to solidify their place in the history books. Either way, Burnley have been absolutely brilliant, and barring either a collapse or me having to remake this same video about some kind of Sheffield United wonder streak between now and the end of the season, they have the look of Championship winners. Click up here on a similar theme to see me rank every championship winner from worst to best. If they get the job done, where might Burnley place in this lot?